Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here, and tonight I want to talk to you all a bit about patch 10.1 and I guess get into a little bit of updated patch 10.1 Warlock feedback. Now, the last videos I put out about a month or so ago talked about 10.07. It was in the middle of 10.07 and 10.1 feedback, but there were a handful of changes that came after feedback was given, so I want to update it a bit heading into patch 10.1. Warlock hasn't received any changes yet. I'm hoping this week some do come along because I think that 10.07 laid a good foundation for what can bring larger changes in 10.1. And while Lock is looking better in 0.7, which comes out in a week and a half, it still could use some changes. So tonight, that'll be that. Quickly, as always, any weak ores, add-ons, profiles, links down below, Twitch and Discord below for free for you guys. As usual, I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons. Thank you guys a million times for all supporting on Patreon. As always, I really appreciate it. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, should be a link up here, as well as down below in the video description. So we're going to start off briefly looking over the feedback we gave like a month or so ago, talk about the changes for a few minutes, and then get into like the updated feedback. Because like I said, some things have changed. So when it comes to patch 10.0.7 feedback, this is that document that I put out like a month or so ago. There were a handful of nodes that were indeed changed, some sort of based around the feedback doc, some were just new changes in general. Briefly want to highlight them. I will say for 10.1, I did indeed remove some things that hadn't been updated, trying to just condense feedback because we are already into PTR. I assume testing is beginning soon for raid test, for raids, dungeons are starting in a few days, and all that. So, number one here, Nightmare. Actually, this is very cool. Nightmare was removed, and Glyph of Fear was basically put in that spot. Permanent fear, I guess, unfleeable fear. You stand in place and cower in fear. It's old Glyph of Fear. Very cool seeing that come back. No changes to Resolve or Abyss Walker. Same with Teachings. Grim Feast, once again, nothing really changed there. Inquisitor's Gaze was buffed substantially. This was mentioned here. No new ability or no new NPC model or anything, but they were buffed substantially, which is very cool to see. And moving on from there, we have Demonology stuff. So Hounds of War is gone now. It is now Umbral Blaze. There's feedback on that in the new doc, but that is gone. Guillotine has been buffed substantially. A 200% damage increase and I believe a duration reduction from 8 seconds to 6 seconds. No changes to Fell Covenant. Ray of Tyranny was buffed a good bit as well, and it should hopefully make it so that Ray of Tyranny is your choice in single target at times, and at times you want GWD in like M+ base settings. So that's pretty cool to see. A point there to, I guess, this feedback. This is still a bug, but is what it is. Moving on to Destro, there really wasn't a whole lot here. There really wasn't anything here, honestly, but hey, you know, you win some, you lose some. Affliction, Siphon Life, still there. Agonizing Corruption is still there, which is sort of an odd spot. One thing it did change, the first thing, Dark Glare. Dark Glare was buffed. They changed the way that Dark Glare works in patch 10.0.7, now 10.1 essentially on PTR. They've made it do 25% damage per dot active on the Dark Glare's target, up from 10%. And they also buffed the behind the scenes spell power modifier to I-Beam on its own. So Dark Glare is indeed doing a good bit more damage. So that feedback was solid, I suppose. Grim Reach was also buffed via the Dark Glare I-Beam buff as well, so also that. And I believe that pretty much rounds out feedback here. Doom Blossom is doing a lot more damage on PTR too. I don't know why. I think it's bugged. I can't find the bug. It's doing like twice the damage it does on retail. So anyways, so getting into the 10.1 updated feedback. Now, like I said, patch 10.0.7 is bringing some nice changes to Warlock. I think it's laying a good foundation for bigger changes, hopefully in patch 10.1. We're getting a few new talent nodes in our class tree. So Sarkathar's Guile, Sargera Technique. We're getting, once again, the Fear Glyph, Horrify back, some changes in Spec trees here as well. But there is the issue of capstones here, in just that being a main focal point for most Warlock feedback over the past patch. Now, some of these points in the class tree, even every tree, Spec tree, all that above, I did leave some from 10.0.7 because they are either larger changes or just didn't really get addressed in the first place. I don't expect them all to get addressed, but there's a good bit of new points in here as well. So off the bat, Gorfian's Resolve, or whatever the one that reduced the cast of a Soulstone, or whatever it did, I think it made your target resurrect with more health, I believe. The one that was right here is gone now. It's not here anymore. However, we mentioned in the previous feedback that either having that reduce the cast time of Soulstone by, like, let's say half at rank 1 and rank 2 making an instant cast, or making Soulburn Soulstone a thing would be a tremendous quality of life increase for Warlock everywhere, whether you're in Mythic Plus, raiding, PvP, world content, group content, whatever. everyone's been in that spot where somebody dies, they call for a res, or you're trying to res, and you're getting yelled at trying to res somebody because you have a cast time on your soulstone, and it's long. And you're trying to, it's just a pain, man. And Soulburn is the perfect tool to make, like, just remove that cast time, maybe tack on a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a bonus health, mana, resurrection clause to it. But it's so simple, it's right there. It's very easy to implement, I would assume, as well. And it would be a tremendous quality of life increase for Warlock. So hopefully Soulburn, whether it stays in this position or not, ends up getting some kind of maybe potential Soulstone clause to it, because Soulstone casting can be annoying at times. Number 2, I mentioned Teaching to the Black Harvest in the previous video. It's still here. I just like this talent a lot, even though it's pretty bad. I like the possibilities that it has. I'm hoping for some kind of change in 10.1 to maybe either give you like larger versions of your Imp, the Voidwalker, the Fellhunter, the Sayad, to have them do more damage, or maybe empower their abilities a good bit more. Currently, giving a 4% DR for 5 seconds when you singe magic is terrible. The Voidwalker one's pretty bad. Fellhunter is pretty bad, and the Sayad is also pretty bad. It's a very cool ability. It feels Warlocky, but unfortunately, it's just not very good in basically any setting. Moving on from there, we have Grim Feast. Now, Grim Feast, we mentioned this a million times. Grim Feast being your inevitable demise, but basically only trait. You take this trait if you're playing only Affliction, and only if you're talented into inevitable demise, which I'm not even playing right here in the first place. Grim Feast realistically needs to be moved somewhere else in the class tree, like maybe up here, somewhere else, or just removed completely. Now, they did indeed sort of move around the Drain Life nodes a bit. Accrue Vitality is here. It used to be here. So initially during beta, Accrue Vitality, this thing, was here. It was recently moved in 0.7 to here. But this was here, and this was here. So it made sense to, like, all right, you know, Accrue Vitality goes into Grim Feast, being here and here, but this got moved down here to a capstone, and this got moved up here recently. You only play Grim Feast if you're playing Affliction, and only if you're playing ID. I'm not playing ID in this build. I'm not even playing, I shouldn't be playing Grim Feast, but it's not like a optimized build. The talent's not really good. If it's going anywhere, it needs to move up further in the tree here, or just put it in the half tree somewhere, or the best solution, probably, in PvE at least, just delete it. Make it a PvP talent. It really is just not very good overall, and just go from there. So we'll get more into the capstones in a minute here, but now the next thing here is Inquisitor's Gaze. So Inquisitor's Gaze and Summon Soulkeeper have both been buffed substantially in patch 10.0.7. Inquisitor's Gaze, the only issue that I have with Inquisitor's Gaze is that it is it has exceptional RNG. There are times where Inquisitor's Gaze will do 7%, 8% of my damage in a 5+ minute single target test. And the next time, 5 minutes later, over a 5-minute test, will do 2%. The proc chance in this thing is wild. There are times it procs back to back to back. There's times it doesn't proc for 3 minutes. There's way too much RNG in this ability. It's cool that it does damage now, but realistically, a good change is making it become a permanent pet again, the way it used to be in early 10.0. Just it lasts for an hour and does damage passively. It would also fix the Affliction Fire Ring until 10.1 hits. If you implemented that early on, probably won't happen. Or increase the proc rate / just put bad luck protection on it, just a guarantee X procs per minute essentially. That would help sort of smooth out the damage, because well, it's very cool when it procs multiple times. It's doing a large portion of my damage, like 8% in a single target, which might be a bit much, but when it doesn't proc, it's basically dead like it used to be, or currently is in 10.0. Now, moving on from there, we have the final 2 nodes here. Now, in the last feedback video, I didn't really mention permanent Doomguard / Grimoire of Supremacy, but we talked about it a lot on stream the week after, all that kind of stuff, and realized that permanent Doomguard, Grimoire of Supremacy, or Grim Sup, whatever you want to call it, is actually a really good fit in the class tree. Whether you put it down here where Soulburn is, or put it down here where Grim Feast is, you can move Soulburn up here, just put it where Black Harvest Teachings is, and put this thing here. Both these capstones are totally movable to earlier parts of the tree, right? So let's say they put permanent Doomguard somewhere down here. It fits Demo, it fits Destro, it fits Ath, it's universally applicable, and Warlocks for a long time most Warlocks, I would say, have for a long time have been asking for, hey, can I get a second pet? I'm a master summoner, a master of all these pets and demons and stuff, and you have an imp that follows you around or whatever. Why can't we be like a BM hunter and have 2 pets out, right? Imagine being a demo lock, and just whatever you're doing, you've got this big, massive hulking Felguard out next to you, and if you take Grimsup at the bottom of your class tree, you've also got this huge Doom Guard standing right here next to you as well. That's really cool. That's sick. It reminds you of OG Ghost Up. And as long as the damage is tuned properly, it would honestly be pretty solid overall. Whether it's a permanent effect or a minute summon or 2-minute summon, I like it to be permanent. I think that'd be pretty cool. But either way, it fits every spec universally. You can't make it give, you know, a decon or a Reign of Tyranny value for Demonology, but it still fits every spec universally. It's cool. It's iconic. I think it's a great idea. I think it's sick. Now, the other thing here in the class tree, which we've harped on for a while, and I've gone back and forth on it. I've always wanted it in the class tree. I didn't think it was very realistic. And while I still don't totally, I think it just sort of needs to happen. It's putting Grand Warlock's design in the class tree. I go on here to talk about it for, I don't know, a paragraph or two. I'm not even going to read it because I know what to say. Every single Warlock spec has Grand Warlock's design in its spec tree, whether you're Demonology, whether you're Destruction, or whether you're Affliction. Demonology is the only spec that plays it now because Infernal's way underpowered for Destro, and Dark Lair with GWD is pretty subpar on its own. But every single spec has it in the class tree. Now, I understand that it's there because your main demons are in your class tree, right? Your Tyrant, your Infernal, and your Dark Lair. And theoretically, putting it in the class tree would make it, okay, well, if you do take GWD in the class tree for whatever reason, whether you're a new player or whatever, and don't select your Tyrant, or your Dark Lair, or your Infernal for whatever reason, you have a dead talent. I understand that, but I think that for the benefit and health of the class overall, either number one, pets like Tyrant, Infernal, and Dark Lair need to go baseline to put GWD in the class tree, and or number two, you have to just accept this is the world that we have to live in, with there being awkward talent combinations. If you put GWD here and Tyrant in this tree here. Now, basically every spec is taking their main cooldown. AF will be in 10.1. We're not taking it now, but that's tuning. Infernal, Tyrant, Dark Lair, they're all your main cooldown. And let's be honest, when I played AF without Dark Lair, it feels sort of empty because you don't have your major demon. You have no cooldowns. You're just sustaining damage. So GWD needs to become part of the class tree. Destro is a different spec. I have never played a spec in this game that feels that much different as Destro with 2-minute Infernal versus 3-minute Infernal. Demo, you have Tyrant value being a minute long, gives you more frequent pet extensions, more frequent, you know, implosions, larger implosions, all that. Some Reign of Tyranny synergy and all that. And honestly, for Affliction, it really isn't even that big. You'll get some extra Dark Lair value, some extra Grim Reach value if you're playing that talent. But overall, putting GW in the class tree, I think personally, is the number one thing that should happen. It's the biggest thing you can do to make Warlock just feel better and just make the class more enjoyable and exciting to play. Jumping into Demonology here, there's a bug that's been around for Devo since beta. And off the bat, it is From the Shadows and Demon Fire. From the Shadows is currently not increasing your Tyrant's Demon Fire damage. Now, this is a bug during beta where it went back and forth, happening and not. I think at this point, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's affecting non-Reign of Tyranny Demon Fire damage. But if you have Reign of Tyranny, it doesn't increase the damage. I'm not totally sure how it's working now. I haven't tested it in the last few days, but I know it's still a bug. I've heard it's still a bug. That should be looked at unless it's intended, but I don't think it is. There's that. So getting into the actual feedback. Now, we talked about Hand of Doom for a long time. Hand of Doom is the iconic Legion trait that every target that's hit by your Hand of Gul'dan has Doom applied to it. And that goes into detail here talking about, you know, Legion stuff and all that, but I think a huge quality of life increase and something that would get us to likely play Doom in a handful of settings, barring a tuning being there, is adding Hand of Doom to the Demonology class tree. This was talked about in the 0.7 feedback, and while I will admit that it might be a bit hard to find a spot to put Hand of Doom, what you could do theoretically is just put Doom here, put Tyrant as a baseline ability in, you know, in the Warlock profile, and go like Doom, Hand of Doom, or go Doom, Kazakh's Final Curse, and put Hand of Doom here. That'd be great, actually. Hey, we're learning as we go here. Doom, Kazakh's Final Curse, Hand of Doom at your 1-point talent trait here, leading into Pack the Antmother, which is also Hand of Gul'dan based, and or you have Sack Souls. That's if Tyrant goes baseline. But outside of that, even adding a clause to Kazakh's Final Curse, making Doom apply to every target hit by Hand of Gul'dan, would go a long way in making us play Doom. Because in this current point, unless Doom is way overtuned and or Kazakh's is buffed a crazy amount, like, no one's playing it. Even if it was better in single target by a little bit, the ability is annoying to play, and there's no relevancy to this in Mythic Plus. It's a single target realistically a single target, or for the most part, a 2-target ability. You're not applying it to 3 targets at once, and it has potential. But in its current form, with the options we have around it, and just, you know, the nature of what Demo is right now, you're not playing Doom. But unless you have Hand of Doom or it's buffed tremendously. So, moving on from there, Umbral Blaze. So, Umbral Blaze is actually a new talent. This talent replaced Hounds of War. It's right here. This is the return of the BFA Azerite trait. And I'm actually a fan of Umbral Blaze. I like it a good bit. Hand of Gul'dan has an 8% chance, or 16, rank 2 out of 2, to burn its target for Shadow Flame damage every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. The points of feedback here is that, number 1, it's bugged. It does rank 1 out of 2 damage at rank 2 out of 2. But the other part is that the 8 and 16% chance seem very low. There's no... It just seems very low, number 1. And even when it procs, the damage it does is also very low. Realistically, it needs probably a decent buff to like 15 and 30%, I'd say, in, you know, for proc chance, and probably a substantial increase to the actual damage part of Umbral Blaze. Now, a cool change to that, similar to Hand of Doom, would maybe make it somewhere on the lines of, hey, Hand of Gul'dan applies Umbral Blaze, or has a chance to apply Umbral Blaze to every target Hand of Gul'dan cleaves. That's sort of a hybrid of like, all right, it's not Hand of Doom, but it's sort of Umbral Blaze-ish, it's sort of Doom-ish, and it also has Mythic Plus, AoE, stacked cleave implications, because just like how, you know, Doom and Cathar's Curse is, for the most part, Umbral Blaze is a single target ability. If you want it to be a single target ability only, it's fine being where it's at, but if you want it to have it more value in other settings, it probably needs to be changed in some form. But it does need to be buffed, and it does indeed need to have the rank 2 out of 2 doing 1 out of 2 damage bug fixed for it. And going on from here, I mentioned briefly Fell Covenant. This is the same thing as last time in the 0.7 doc. Going on about the maintenance buff on Fell Covenant being really tedious and annoying to maintain. There's a few points you're talking about, what ways you could change it. Have Demon Bolt increase the duration by 3 seconds, being the duration of Fell Covenant if it's active or whatever. It doesn't give you raw stacks, but increases duration, because quite often you don't even cast Shadow Bolt in the first place as Demo, because you're swimming in Demon Bolt procs. Number 2, possibly increase the duration of Fell Covenant to 30 seconds, which would make it easier to maintain. Number 3, maybe increase the damage per stack, but decrease the max stack count from 4 to 2 in an effort to make it less punishing if the effect falls, and or easier to maintain and stack. Because if you've played the Fell Covenant, Power Siphon, Sack Souls build, you know how frustrating it is when your Fell Covenant falls and you have to cast 4 Shadow Bolts to restack it, when you really didn't even want to cast one in the first place, and you can just feel the damage loss. It just feels terrible. So while Demo is the worst single target spec for Warlock by a large margin right now, if it is buffed, or if there is a setting where you play Fell Covenant, I don't want to play the current version of Fell Covenant. So, alright, so getting into Destruction. Number 1, there is a bug off the bat with Destruction. It is Backlash and Backdraft. So Backlash is this: physical attacks have a 25% chance to make your next Incinerate instant cast. These procs of Backlash, the instant cast Incinerate, is consuming a charge of Backdraft. It's been a bug since alpha. I forgot about it for a long time. Chat keeps bugging me to mention it. I remember now. Please fix it. Moving on from there. So this is a point that was in the 0.7 feedback doc as well, and that is Flashover. Now, it's the same thing, basically. Flashover was a talent in Shadowlands in previous expansions that increased the damage of conflict rate and made it provide additional charge of Backdraft. It was removed in Dragonflight, which has hurt the overall fluidity of Destro rotationally, which it sort of has. It plays a little bit, I guess, into like Destro's lack of mobility. Not a whole lot, but reduced cast times do help a bit there. Explosive Potential, this trait here, is a new talent which reduces the cooldown of conflict rate by 2 seconds, and while it does help a bit with Roaring Blast uptime, conflict rate CD is usually below 8 seconds regardless with haste modifiers or just in general. Bringing back Flashpoint in this spot as a talent over EP, in EP's place, there you go, would greatly help Destruction's overall fluidity, which I think it would a good bit, and make the spec more enjoyable as a whole. We would need to increase our max Backdraft stacks to 4. It is currently 2. There's no Flashover. In the Backdraft talent, which is right here, which would be the same way as it was in Shadowlands. And it makes sense. Backdraft would lead into Flashover. It's a perfect fit. It's a perfect fit. And while I do like EP, I think Flashover just feels much better. Moving on from there. So I've mentioned Fire and Brimstone here. I put it in. Someone's going to yell at me if I don't. Honestly, Fire and Brimstone, like, if they added the shard generation clause back to it, it would help a bit when it comes to, like, you know, just generating shards or AoE, whether it's fueling more in a fire cast via Inferno, and or just, I don't know, fueling more Chaos Bolt cast, whatever you're doing in AoE. It would help a bit. Realistically, Fire and Brimstone needs to have a, you know, bigger damage amp to incinerate. 13 and 25% is laughable, even with Burned Ashes and all the buffs to incinerate. It's sort of between a rock and a hard place. It's been nerfed multiple times over the course of every expansion. And Destro struggles a lot in the 3 to 5, even 6-ish target range if you're playing the Inferno build. You can see it even running keys on stream. We're not pulling big. Destro with Inferno is doing okay damage with Rain of Fire, but in those 3-4 target settings, like, you just struggle. You can't keep up with most of the meta because the Rain of Fire Inferno builds are built for 10 plus target pulls, 8, 9, 10 targets. If you're playing those builds, you're typically playing Pandemonium. Even if you're not, Cry Havoc's pretty eh. A buff back to Fire and Brimstone's Incinerate damage would help a good bit, but, you know, we'll see where that goes. I think it's worth bringing up. Similar to that, so Cataclysm and Inferno. This is a point that's brought up a good bit. And for a long time, people have wanted Cataclysm baseline. And while I'm not against that at all, I think it's sort of maybe like a hard-ish kind of sell, but I think it sort of, in a sense, makes sense. It was in the 0.7 doc as well. Cata and Inferno both share a choice talent, which is right here. The vast majority of the time, take Inferno in those 8, 9, 10, 12 plus target settings for the big AB profile that Destro can bring. But it leaves you a bit lacking because you don't have that initial, you know, on-demand Cata applying multiple immolates, which means faster flashpoint stacks. It means more shard generation coming in. I spelled this wrong. You don't really have that. And I can tell you, when it comes to playing with Cata and without, Inferno is a better option. Heavy AoE. It's not close. But having the option to go into a pack in Mythic Plus or AoE, or even in raiding when a pack spawns on a boss, and just go Cataclysm, applying 6, 7, 8 immolates and doing a bit of initial burst damage. Not a lot. It would help a little bit in those settings, though. Feels incredible. It's a huge quality of life increase. And if I can make a case for one ability to go baseline for Destro, it would be Cata. It feels like before Aff had... It's basically Vile Taint, right? It's basically Vile Taint for Affliction. It's almost the same thing. It's just Destro. Having that go baseline, applying multiple immolates would feel incredible. It'd be great. I don't think it's going to happen. I think a more likely option, one that I've suggested here, is to move... Just get rid of Pyrogenics. The talent's not very... It's fine. It's a bit of a damage increase, but honestly, if you had a row that went like Inferno, or sorry, Rain of Fire, Inferno, Cata, or put Cata here into Rain of Fire into Inferno, just some combination of those three would make Destro's toolkit in Mythic Plus and AoE settings just feel so much better. Being able to go into a pack and just go, all right, pulling Cata, multiple immolates rolling, throw Rain of Fires, go into a Havoc window instead of going immolate, immolate, immolate. Then it just feels bad, man. It feels like how Aff used to when you had to start applying multiple agonies to a pack. Other classes were going in and just meat grinding it all down. It feels the same way, right? Is it going to happen? Probably not, but at the same time, if there's a possibility, I think it should really be considered because Cata just feels so much better and it really makes Destro's quality of life in those settings just much better. So, moving on from there, a couple more nodes left here. So, Crashing Chaos and Infernal brand. Same node as that was mentioned in the 0.7 doc here as well. I'm sort of hoping that, once again, 0.7's laid a foundation for 0.1 larger changes, which is why we didn't see changes to the Infernal talent node here really at all. Crashing Chaos is undertuned. I guess Inferno brand's undertuned. Crashing Chaos just feels awkward when you have your 2-piece, 4-piece rolling, when you have just Soul Conduit baseline, when you have your Infernal down, because with Burned Ashes as well, because you're just overcapping on shards. Launching Chaos Bolt, you're capped at 5 shards, right? When you have Rain of Fire costing 2 shards, yeah, you can dump some Rain of Fires, but the ability just feels undertuned. And that's sort of the reason as to why you're not playing Rain of Chaos or Grand Warlock's Design either. All of these nodes are undertuned here. It talks more about it in here. A good option, honestly, add to this for Crashing Chaos is maybe Remorse Supremacy instead. The old BFA talent, where each soul shard spent when your Infernal is active now increases damage of your Chaos Bolt by 8% and it stacks. That's basically a better version of Crashing Chaos here, a fixed version. It would also work well with Warlock's Design. It would work well with Reign of Chaos. It would work well in general with, you know, Infernal synergies. But in the current state of Crashing Chaos and Infernal brand, it makes it a very hard justification taking these talents, and makes it even harder getting down to Reign of Chaos or GWD. Now, the last point here, this is a new one that I added, and it's a bit wordy, but I think it's worth adding. So, burn to ashes / chaos bolt damage and Destro's lack of movement. Talked about it in a video a few weeks ago. Burn to ashes has gone through a handful of changes over the course of alpha and beta. They buffed the damage amp to incinerate a bit as well. Recently, they made a change that gives you a max stat count of 6 on burn to ashes, up from 4, which that was, I guess, made as a response to mentioning, hey, you overcap on burn to ashes very often playing Destro, dumping chaos bolts, because you're maintaining madness. You're sort of forced to do that, right? But unfortunately, adding 6 stacks to burn to ashes up from 4 doesn't really change anything, because you never drop below 2 stacks really anyways. There's seldom few times I've ever dropped below, 1 stack of burn to ashes, and if I do, I'm casting a bolt anyways, because I've cast 4 incinerates in a row, and I'm building back to 2 and 4 stacks. You really never don't have a buffed incinerate in single target or 2 target in the majority of settings when you're casting incinerates, right? In heavy AoE, it doesn't really matter in the first place, but you still have it rolling regardless. So I think a better change that would help alleviate Destro, or help fix Destro's lack of movement as well, I thought about it a lot, is number 1, add a clause to burn to ashes that allows you to cast incinerate while moving. I joked about Killjaden's Cunning a few weeks ago and put a tweet out about it and stuff. KJC is probably a bit too strong, depending on what version it gave us, right? But adding a movement clause to burn to ashes, being able to cast incinerate, and probably incinerate only, so it's not too broken or anything. You can, each stack gives you a cast of incinerate on the move, right? So you can have a max of 6 stacks, even make it 4 again, who cares, right? It doesn't matter. But you can cast, 4 or 6 incinerates on the move. And on top of that, you very well might want to look at possibly reducing the damage amp that it brings to incinerate and shifting a bit of damage of that back to Chaos Bolt. Because there's multiple things being discussed here, but realistically on PTR, with this node being added into the class tree for Destro, Sargera Technique, Incinerate's doing like 29% of my damage, Chaos Bolt's doing 31%. And my hardest critting Incinerates are typically always harder than my hardest hitting Chaos Bolt. Well, I'm not really against that. I think it sort of goes against what Destruction's always been, having really hard hitting Chaos Bolts, and then Incinerate, Conflagrate, Immolate support the hard hitting Chaos Bolts, right? So I think a bit of a retooling to burn to ashes would be really, really cool. It'd be good in plus at times, good in rating at times. Maybe make it like, 10% at rank 1, 20 at rank 2, like raw damage wise, and add a clause to it. You can cast Incinerate while moving per stack of burn to ashes, however you want to word it, right? Sort of a mini KJC, but baked into BTA. And that would also at the same time sort of make it not as big of an issue when it comes to overcapping on stacks if there's movement on a fight. It'd still be a bit awkward, but that's just sort of the world we live in, with madness being a thing and Destro having really no mobility at all. And finally, we have Affliction. Now, I'm going to say off the bat, there was one thing that I was thinking of for AF that I can't remember for the life of me. So if you guys think of something, put it down below in the comment section. Like, it's not a bait, legitimately. I can't think of what it was, but... Oh, I know what it was! I'll add it in this part of the video. Okay, so... I swear, my brain. I'm getting old. Anyways, so number 1, Siphon Life. This is a copy pasta from the 10.07 doc. To a similar extent, it's been talked about a lot. Affliction and Button Blow is a very real thing. You've got... your opener is Haunt, Unstable Affliction, Agony, Corruption, Siphon Life, Drain Soul, PS or Vile Taint, Dark Glare, Rapture again. It's like 15 buttons. And yes, you're rapturing a few times. It's like 10, 11, 12 buttons. So it's not including maintaining Shadow's Embrace, refreshing Haunt, popping up Potion. If you're playing Soul Rot, it's even more. Button Bloat with AF is very, very real. There's a post mentioned or put up recently about Shadow Priest having Button Bloat. I'm like, have you played AF? AF's the same, I feel like. It's got a lot of Button Bloat, and for a long time, people have called for Siphon Life to be removed, essentially. I think a great option, a great way of doing that is making it something like this. Altering Siphon Life is something that has often been mentioned as a potential solution to Button Bloat for AF and complex dot juggling. This is an older version of Siphon Life. When you deal damage with Corruption, you are healed for 40% of the damage done. In addition, the damage done by your Corruption, Seed, and UA is buffed or increased by 5%. Now, off the bat, you can easily remove the healing part of it and just have it buff Corruption, have it buff Seed, have it buff UA. You can have it buff dots in general. I don't know. What I'm getting at is some kind of passive effect where it buffs your dots, maybe heals you. Harvester of Souls just left and they cited it being hard to tune because of the healing. remove the healing clause, I don't care. Have it buff your dots passively or something. It's probably some kind of healing clause needs to be added to it. Undertune it. Don't really care. As long as the damage is relevant, you're not hitting Siphon Life in single target, AF will feel so much better. Button bloat will be gone. It'll be just feel so much better. I think AF, this version of AF is actually like pretty strong. It's very customizable. A few more nodes here that are worth mentioning, but the changes to AF got Kindled Malice, Dark Virtuosity, also having Sagara Technique in Sakrothar's Guile on the Tree. Like, it makes AF a real contender next patch. But one big thing in single target is Siphon Life. While DT is 8 seconds, when you're spinning 8 plates at once, it still becomes quite the headache. And Siphon Life, I think, is the source of many of those issues. So, moving on from there, Agonizing Corruption. So, it's this ability right here. Basically, I just TLDR, it's never played anywhere. If you want to keep it around, make it a 1-point talent and make it, 2 stacks per target hit or whatever. Just increase the value of it, make it a 1 rank talent, or just change it somehow. I mentioned maybe reducing the cast time on CD Corruption to be an option here too, because it goes like Rapture into Seed into Sow, but something needs to happen. It's a dead node. Not really played anywhere. Phantom Singularity. So this is a minor point here. I don't really care what's simming better. I think both are fun to play with. It's fine. I'm just saying in general that typically Phantom Singularity has been our, single target talent for AF. Biotain simming higher, probably because of Dread Touch uptime and being more frequent dot applications. I don't care either way, but if Blizz wants to keep, PS as our main go-to single target talent, probably need to buff it a little bit. So, fourth thing here is Dark Harvest. So Dark Harvest is old Decaying Soul Satchel from Shadowlands. In Shadowlands, it was a 5% haste and crit amp per target hit by your Soul Rot, right? On top of that, you also had Field of Blossoms from Dreamweaver, which would amplify the haste and crit amp multiplicatively as well. And that was not deemed too strong. When AF had that, AF wasn't OP or anything. It was still okay-ish, if that's even a bit of a stretch. They nerfed Dark Harvest to 2.5% in Alpha and Beta. I think it should return to 5% per target hit. AF is not doing an insane amount of damage just from Soul Rot or this huge AoE. AF's AoE is good in keys. A lot of that is Soul Flame value. A good bit of it. I think bringing back Dark Harvest to 5% per target hit by Soul Rot could be fine. I will say it's a little awkward at times because you have Soul Eater's Gluttony now, which gives you Soul Rot basically every pack. But it's more of a suggestion, I guess. I don't know where it would land like 100%, but I feel like returning this to 5% really wouldn't be that bad, and it would make it a talent that I want to cast in, well, AoE things, right? I left this clause in here about Doom Blossom. It suggests replacing it with Rampant Afflictions for like a more council-based option over a Dread Touch single target-based option. You can read through it if you want. I'll have a link to it down below, obviously. I left it in here because I don't know what to do with this. Dread Touch, or Doom Blossom's like bugged, or there's some weird stealth buff that came into it. It's doing like 10 to 14% of my damage on PTR in AoE. I don't know what happened. I'd assume some bug with Xavian Teachings going baseline. Not sure, I can't figure it out. Somebody else maybe can. I don't know, but it's there. So, yeah. The final thing here, it's from the last stock as well. Plus the one I didn't add yet, is Soul Swap and Malefic Affliction issues. So the big thing here, when it comes to Malefic Affliction, and this is Soul Swap here as well, they've added Soul Swap back. They've changed it, I think, in 0.5 to basically copy all the dots on the target, right? Now, the main thing with Soul Swap is that it sort of has issues with Malefic Afflictions and Dread Touch. So I'm going to go get in combat here. One of the big things on fights next year in Aberrus, which there does seem to be some Soul Swap fights potentially for AF if you're playing it, is that let's say you're opening up as AF here. Let me pull this pet out and get it on my screen here. Let's say you're opening up as AF in this target. We're going in, put our dots of whatever. We're going to stack our MA up a bit, right? We're going to Drain here. We're going to go Vile Taint. We're going to Dark Glare. Start stacking our MAs, right? There's 1 MA, 2, 3, and Dread Touch here. If I Soul Swap now and move this, right? Let's exhale over here. There's the UA. There's the MA. It's still up, right? So that's good. It actually moves the MA, and I can instantly go Dread Touch over here. That's sick. But the problem is that when this mob dies, if I move it early, the UA, it removes Malefic Afflictions. I can't move the UA back to the main target. A great example, this tier, Dathia. If an ad spawns, I'd like to move UA to that with Soul Swap. Move it back. but I lose all my stacks of MA. And we are trying to maintain Dread Touch in those settings as well for that single target dot increase. It really, really devalues and just lowers the overall like just validity of Soul Swap in those settings, right? I mean, every fight this tier. I mean, theoretically, Aranog, Sinarth, Council, that sort of Council, Dathia, Kurog, Brookie, Raziath. There are options to maybe Soul Swap at times in this fight, or these fights, but with MA stacks dropping, whenever you move UA back from that target to the other target, it loses a lot of value. I know that moving UA manually like that has dropped MA stacks before. And while I'm against that being a thing in the first place, I think just as long as you maintain UA somewhere, if you move it from one target to the other, it should maintain MA stacks. I live with it, but I do think they should add some way, spaghetti coated in whatever, so that if you do this, for example, right, let's do this. So we have stacks up. If you do this and move your UA, this maintains the MA stack. Find a way to code it somehow where if this target is dying or whatever, if you move it back from this target to the target it was on before, you maintain the MA stack. Find some way to do it, because that would make Soul Swap actually worth playing. You can lower the duration of Soul Swap, but then you get into this weird range of like, all right, is it too low? What do I do? Yes. And the final thing here they didn't mention in the doc, I'll add it after this. Whenever you're looking at it online, it should be there. Inevitable Demise. This was buffed and nerfed. There's a bug with it for a while. This ability, this is the single target build that I've been playing on beta for 10.0.7 and in 10.1. Inevitable Demise is undertuned a good bit. Rank 1 Pandemic Invocation, if you play around it, is doing more damage than 2 points in Inevitable Demise. Optimizing Drain Life with Haunt buffs, Shadow's Embrace buffs. Now, I'm not saying this is overtuned. It's not. This is just undertuned, right? I'm playing a point in Soul Swap and a point in PI. Mainly I want PI in the first place, but I also want Withering Bolt. I have to go through Soul Flame, Soul Swap, or ID to get it, and I think this is the best option because ID is just not very good. Now, you need 2 points here, right? Now, if you're in a prog setting or you're not getting good Pandemic Invocation value, sure, you can move the 2 points into ID if you're not playing PI or Soul Swap, but in a pure patchwork setting, it doesn't really feel like I should be playing a point in Soul Swap or whatever over ID. It just needs buff, right? I know it's good in like council-based Soul Rot Cleave settings, and Grim Feast does indeed help with that at times, right? But like, it probably needs a bit of a buff boost damage because it shouldn't be losing to Pandemic Invocation in single target. Yeah. So thanks for watching, guys. That should just about wrap it up. Hopefully the video wasn't too long. It probably was. I tried to go fast in the video without, going too fast, but I wanted to hit on every node for every spec. I didn't want to make 4 videos on this because 10.1's already out. We've had a week of, changes and the zone being out. No lock changes yet, but I'm hoping once again that, we haven't gotten any because there's larger changes coming. But if it's time for feedback, well, that time is now. So let me know what you guys think of the feedback in the comment section below. Like I said, any questions or anything, put it on there as well. I'll be sure to get back to you. If you have any suggestions, also drop them down there, and I will definitely take a look through. Because last time, in the time before, there were suggestions taken directly from chat on Twitch and the comment section here that ended up being implemented. So yeah, see where that goes. But any week Warriors add-ons profiles, links all down below as well, Twitch and Discord. And as always, I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons for in the video. Guys, thank you a million times for also supporting Patreon. I really appreciate it. Looking at supporting, link up here as well as down below in the video description. Like I said, Warlock is certainly going to be better in patch 10.0.7. I haven't made a whole lot of videos about it lately because I want to see what happens in a couple weeks, but it's going to be good. It's going to be solid. I do think that 0.7 lays a very good foundation for what could be larger changes in 10.1. I'm hoping. I love the idea of permanent Doomguard in the class tree. That's so cool. And I love the idea of GWD in the class tree as well. I think everybody does. But I will say that at the same time, I didn't mention it a whole lot in the class section. Adding all these cool abilities in the class tree means that, you can take builds and you can play builds with triple capstones in the class tree, right? You got all 3 here. But it does sort of limit your overall potential, I guess, utility talents. Like I said, either way, Lock's looking good in patch 10.0.7, and Aberrus testing, I would assume, the 10.1 raid probably begins in a few weeks. We have testing of the new dungeon starting on Thursday of this coming week, which I'll be doing on stream. It's also Diablo open weekend, so we'll try and just figure that out as it goes. But yeah, so all that being said, Thanks for watching, guys. If you liked the video, hit the like and sub buttons below. It helps out a ton. And I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.